you know, when I go places and people come to my openings, I have young trans people give me big, huge hugs and thank me because they felt seen by me. I'm so grateful that I created space for people. I'm really, really grateful about that. And I think that's a huge influence to create space. And look at where we are right now in this world. It makes me want to cry. I can't believe, you know, it. Like, I want to do a piece right now where I'm the lesbian cowboy, because here's the Oval Office right now. This is the Oval Office with the ties hanging down on the gold chairs, you know? This is the fucking Oval Office right now, where it's just all the way open all the time. So I want to put myself in Red Dead Redemption, because that's one video game that I play heavily, and I want to be the fucking lesbian cowboy. I need to be speaking right now because I'm very upset. Hi, my name is Opie. I'm an artist who predominantly works in photography, and I live in Los Angeles, California. In the beginning, it's Louis Hine, and that was because when I was 9 years old, I saw Louis Hine's photographs in my social studies book in school, and I decided to write a paper about the photograph versus child labor laws. And I think that I got an F on the paper, or if I remember correctly, because I went to great detail describing what I saw in the photograph. And my father owned a factory in Ohio, and I would spend weekends in that factory. And I think that I thought of myself as a 9-year-old child working in the factory because it was so familiar with me. And so I went home and I said to my parents that I wanted to be a documentary photographer, and could I have a camera for my 9th birthday. And then I proceeded to kind of still photograph since I was 9, the same things that I photograph today, just with more intelligence and intentionality, I suppose. But they're very connected to those early photographs I made in Sandusky, Ohio from my childhood. I think for me, becoming an artist or choosing to be an artist was not something that, you know, your parents want you to do. And my dad was dating his ex-girlfriend from high school, Elinore Schnurr, who's a painter here in New York. And Elinore, I went to visit her, and I was doing photography classes in Virginia, but I was really going to be a kindergarten teacher. That was it. I was going to be a kindergarten teacher. And Elinore just said, "What are you doing, Kathy? You have been a photographer your entire life since I've known you, and I don't really understand this kindergarten teacher thing. Are you going to really be satisfied sitting in small chairs for the rest of your life?" And as a big woman, I thought about those small chairs, and I thought about what dear Elinore was saying to me. And she said, "I want you to quit Virginia Intermont College, and I want you to go to a major city and go to art school. And this is what you need to do, because this is your path in life." And so I called my mom, you know, and I said, "Mom, I guess I'm quitting Virginia Intermont College and I'm going to San Francisco Art Institute. I'm going to apply." And so that one person literally changed my path from sitting in tiny chairs for the rest of my life, and again saw me enough to say, "Hey, you're actually really good, and this is where your passion is, and this is what you should be doing with your life." I'll pick the first teacher that I saw kind of seen by, like somebody who literally just decided that, okay, you're worthy and I'm going to start mentoring you in a different way, and that was Larry Salton. And I would say the other person was Hank Wessel, but it was between Larry Salton and Hank Wessel at San Francisco Art Institute in the early 80s that saw my potential as a photographer and really decided to, you know, put me through the tasks of figuring out what to do with the work. Well, this is like that kind of question of, if you get on a desert island, what artwork would you want to live with, right? If you had to pick one from art history, which is almost impossible, but I'll choose Picasso's portrait of Gertrude Stein. And that is because that is such an interesting, awkward portrait for Picasso to do from a position of how he looked at women. And the Gertrude Stein portrait allows her to fill the frame and create something completely different as a portrait of a woman. And I could see Picasso's struggle within that portrait. And it's just a phenomenal painting that I always have to visit when it's up. Self-portrait cutting is foundational for me as deciding to be incredibly brave as an artist at a time in which my friends were dying of AIDS, and what blood meant and what community meant and what relationships meant. I really anticipated for that piece to bury me in a certain way. I thought, oh, I'll never get a teaching job, like this is it, like I'm going way too far with my art here. And I think it's a piece that has allowed me to remind students about what it is to go ahead and intuitively sometimes trust your own position. But what it did for me in making me a braver artist was really important, not to second guess my ability to navigate this world and think about it in really complicated ways and also personal ways. That the political and the personal can be ingrained all the way through your practice. There was a Christian Boltanski show titled Lessons of Darkness. And I went through that show and the way that Christian Boltanski used photography, but also artifact and relationship to memory and the idea of humanity and Holocaust. I literally felt haunted within my body after leaving that exhibition. It was really incredibly powerful work that hit you in the gut, but then you could also be with it really quietly, like mourning in a certain way. And there was a quality to that that I really remember in my 30s going, oh, this is such an interesting feeling for me to be having after looking at art and asking that question around audience. And then I would say that I got my dream a bit last year at MASP in Sao Paulo when I was able to hang my work with the old masters on the Lina Bobardi plinths and the way that that worked spatially within the history. And I was really worried that my portraits would fall flat and it would seem somewhat absurd to try to hang with the old masters, you know, with Rembrandt and Holbein and all of these people that I was looking at. But what it did was it created another emotional response for me about humanity in relationship to why I make portraits. It moved me, and it made me understand that the goals that I had as an artist and the pursuits that I was actually doing weren't cliche, that they actually could hold. It was a lifetime moment for me, that I know that I'll never unsee it, I'll never unexperience it, just in the same way as that Boltanski exhibition. Like it hits you, and when something hits you through your body, I think that that's really profound. I've been very much a solo artist for most of my life, but when I turned 60, I met this amazing woman at the American Academy in Rome by the name of Kati Barkan. And I've ended up collaborating with her as an architect on numerous projects now. And it's the first time that I've brought a voice into my practice, which scares the heck out of me, to be honest. But it's also such a great voice to be participating with. And we want to start doing more architectural projects together. I've always viewed my work in relationship to space. And so the Vatican was a place I had never been to Rome. You know, I went when I was 60 years old to Rome for the first time. So I photographed every single representation of blood within the Vatican, which again, they want to put trigger warnings next to my work in museums for self-portrait cutting on my back, but there's no trigger warnings for a tapestry with a sword stabbing a child's head. And so again, this hypocrisy in relationship to the world view and how we structure notions of religion and morality has always been very hard for me as a lesbian. And so I decided to break down these components, and so I photographed the exterior walls of the Vatican, every single representation of blood within the Vatican Museum, and then every single window looking out because Vatican is separate also. It's a city within a city. And so how do we deal with that politically, and the idea of the window as being transparent? But when the window's open, Rome reflects inside the museum. What does that mean? You know, so these subtle things of making very quiet observational work that has these larger societal meanings. And so the relationship of that structure and that power and this notion of Christianity has always been hypocritical for me. And so I wanted to make a body of work that began to break that down a bit, symbolically. I would say that the book that I ended up augmenting and the book that I recommend all the time is Rebecca Solnit, The Field Guide to Getting Lost. I'm a pretty voracious reader. I read a lot of dystopia, you know, feminist sci-fi as well. A lot of my work plays with utopic, dystopic ideas. But that Field Guide to Getting Lost and how she leads me through the landscape, and it's one of those books that when my friend Diana Nyad was trying to swim from Cuba to Florida, there was one time that we were in Florida after a failed swim where she got stung by the box jellyfish and she was just a wreck. I sat and I read like what it is to dream of achieving within landscape and kind of the metaphors around the earth in relationship to the body, and there's just something about that book that I always pull it out to quote. Going through the world and being an exhibiting artist and working with different curators allow you to really see some things in your own work. The first curator was Elizabeth Smith that I ended up doing about 3 exhibitions with her, and she opened up my eyes in different ways. But I would say the most important person in my life that created different language for me around my work is Helen Molesworth and the way that she saw it. She's been phenomenally important voice for me. I love having a person that matches you and understands what you're trying to do, and then they can elevate it, and then they ask you questions that are important for you to think about that you might not have incorporated within the work. And Helen is that voice for me, pretty much always. The other art form that I spend more time with than anything is media. I'm a big film and television watcher. I mean, I'm somebody who literally watches series. I'm still watching fucking Grey's Anatomy. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I've watched Days of Our Lives as soap opera since I was 7.
Melissa, are you afraid of being a star?
So you have to ask yourself, why are you attached to this? What is this? What is the ritual in one's life? There is something about being habitual and patterning that creates a way for you to move through your life in these other ways. And now that Days of Our Lives have gay characters on it, I waited my whole life for that. I mean, it's like, they tried the lesbian thing, that didn't work too well, but now there's definitely gay male characters. They thought probably the lesbians were going to be sexy, and then I think it freaked out the viewership, so they went totally gay male. I had a television in every room growing up, kind of one of those Midwestern kids that there was just a TV in every room. I think that television has been an incredible source of information for me, but also something to fight back against as well. I think that the most important thing is to operate on different levels that is both an intellectual level but also a level of humanity. And I think it's really important for every artist to ask themselves, what are the really important questions within my mind that I'm trying to create through my work? Besides the questions I need to answer for myself within making the work, what are the larger questions that I'm trying to frame for an audience? And I think that teaching artists is one of the biggest privileges in one's life, because you get to sit with these, 19-year-old, 18-year-old ideas on up. But if you can sit with a young person and begin to help shape their ideas and give them materials to read and open up their mind through history, that's inspiring. And it's inspiring for me. It was inspiring for me to be a teacher and to hold those moments and to see them go on and be able to get in every big show, you know, and that's really special stuff, actually.